Welcome to Experts Explain Trauma. Today we've got Bev Mitelman joining us to answer common questions that survivors have about attachment styles, and she'll also be giving us tips to help us on our healing journey. Okay, Bev, here's our question. What common relationship patterns indicate insecure attachment style?
That's a great question. So, when we talk about secure versus insecure attachment, we're really talking about a set of patterns that we learned early in childhood. So, someone that grew up with a secure attachment, they themselves feel very comfortable with themselves, identifying their emotion, trusting themselves, and they feel very comfortable with others, right? So, for them, they look at the world through a lens of connection.
Ah, yes.
Yes. And so you can extrapolate from that the relationship patterns there would be someone who's understands their needs, who's very communicative, who is very good at setting and respecting other people's boundaries, and has a healthy set of coping mechanisms. So that's sort of generally where we're aiming towards when we're talking about secure attachment. When we're talking about insecure attachment, we're talking about folks who grew up in a home where they didn't get that sense of safety that they needed, right? So they feel unsafe. So they're carrying wounds like I will be abandoned, or I'm defective, or I will be betrayed. And of course, this shows up in our relationship patterns,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Very much so. So
Mm-hmm.
someone who's anxiously attached and carrying the wound of I will be abandoned, um, they are usually from a relationship standpoint, there's quite a bit of emotional dysregulation. Right. So they feel their feelings in a really big way. So one of the big things you'll see is this like emotional volatility. So it's like 1 minute they're happy, 1 minute they're sad, 1 minute they're angry. It's sort of like big, big emotions. On the other spectrum, on the avoidant side, we often see people who underfeel. So they tend to over rationalize, underfeel, repress their feelings because they haven't developed the modeling for how to handle their difficult feelings. So they tend to avoid their feelings. And if you're their partner, they'll avoid yours too.
Oh, yes.
Right. And so when we look at relationship patterns, what we're really looking for is a number of things: emotional regulation, the ability to feel our feelings, to communicate in a healthy way, and then go back to baseline. And also looking at trust. Trust you have in yourself, and trust that you afford to other people.
Interesting, very interesting. I know another thing with the insecure or the what was it, the insecure attachment,
The anxiously
the
attached?
anxiously attached.
Mm.
When you were explaining about the big emotions, and I know for me, I'll go from being completely calm to completely upset, like
Mm.
from one end of the spectrum to the other. And that's
Yeah.
a real good indicator that something is really off, because it's one thing to realize and get angry or upset about something, but the emotion didn't match up with the problem or whatever is going on. It doesn't
Yeah.
match up.
It's such a good example. So we know that whenever someone responds emotionally with a reaction more than, let's say, 5 out of 10, like I like to put things on a scale, right?
Yeah, give you an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you sort of have a reaction that's more than a 5 out of 10, typically you're not reacting to what's in front of you. It's triggering something that's deeper, that's an unhealed wound. And so often, especially if you're the recipient of this, it'll feel like, why are they getting so upset? I just said that I preferred the other dress on you, like, for example, right?
Real innocent comment. Real innocent.
Yeah, I didn't mean to hurt her, but someone who grew up with a wound of, for example, I am not good enough, if you make a comment on how they're dressed, for example, it might really push that button, right? So we all have triggers, right? But the way in which the intensity hits us is a big indicator. So those that are more securely attached, it's not that they don't get triggered. They get triggered, but in a smaller way. They're able to talk themselves through it, and then come back to baseline. When I say baseline, I mean I'm talking about our nervous system. When we come back to rest and digest, instead of being in this fight or flight mode, right? So we're able to handle those emotions in a much quicker way, a much more balanced way. Whereas someone who is carrying a deep wound, for example, they feel unlovable, and they're in a relationship, let's say early dating, and they're casually dating someone and it's not even going that well, but the person breaks up with them because in their heart of hearts they know that this is not the right match. But being broken up with will really push on their button because they already have the wound inside of them that they are unlovable, right? So, again, we all have these triggers, and they do come out very much so in the context of relationships, especially romantic
Oh
relationships.
yeah, that'll push every button. So will kids. So will your kids. Your kids will push your buttons too. For sure.
Yeah, I have two sons. They know exactly what buttons. I don't do it often though, honestly. They're great. They're great. I would say kids. They're not kids. They're young adults. But they don't do it often, but if they when that's always the issue when you get close to someone is their weak spots, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
So with helping our listeners who have the insecure attachment style, what it sounds like that the secure attachment person has that maybe the insecure one doesn't have is the self-awareness, right?
Mhm.
Because the secure attachment person has is healthy enough at that moment that they can feel something's off and they stop, they pause, and they give themselves that moment and kind of process it. And then they have their response, which their response will usually line up properly with whatever comment or question. Where an insecure person, you don't even, well, I'm not going to say you, I'm going to say me. What I used to do, I'm going to talk about me, is I would go from, like I said, zero to all the way upset. And there was nothing warning me about that, giving me any indication. And then I've already got a whole bunch of stuff coming out of my mouth before I realize, whoa, what's going on? But the stuff's already
Mhm.
out of my mouth, and I'm watching the person's reaction. And then I'm horrified, and then it just spins me down. Right. So the self awareness for me would be the first thing that someone would need to pay attention to is paying attention to what's going on with your body. Right.
Such a great point. It's interesting because you say that you can go from 0 to 60 like this,
A
and that
flash.
yeah, and that there's no real indication. But if we really stopped you in that moment, I bet we could identify one or two things in your body that were telling you that you were moving quickly into the explosive zone.
I
So,
bet you're right. I bet you're right. And again, because my self awareness wasn't there, I blew right past it.
right. And so the body is really, really interesting in this way. So when I felt my anxiety spike, because we all have these moments in time where we feel it. There were certain things that I realized would happen in my body. So first of all, my muscles would tense, very, very common. I would start to feel dizzy, like the room was spinning. Uh,
Ooh.
Less common, but for me, it became my go-to. My head would start spinning.
Oh,
Okay, I know what you're telling me. Once I recognized it. At first, when I started feeling it, it was very frightening.
yeah. I wish I had that because that would be a real big sign.
It's an obvious one. And the third one, which is a little weird too, is that my eyelid here would
Twitch.
flicker. It
Yeah.
would twitch,
Yeah.
flutter. Nobody could see it, but I felt
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
And so, for the longest time, I had no idea what this was. I remember going to the doctor, and it was an ophthalmologist that told me that's like either your nervous system or you're overly tired.
Oh, good
And I
doctor.
Okay. And so our body does give us signals, but the self-awareness piece, are we able to identify and parse out what our body is telling us,
Right.
right? In
Right.
those moments.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So, what can we do? Because obviously we can't walk around always self-aware, right? We're going to be paranoid. I mean, we're going to be looking at everything, scrutinizing everything, and we're going to become paranoid, right? So what can we do to start Because obviously triggers happen when we don't expect it, right? That's the big thing that I hate about them is you don't see them coming. And
Mhm.
so they can come out of it completely out of the blue, pull the rug out from under you, and you're off and running before you even know it. So again, we can't walk around paranoid. We can't walk around constantly looking. So what can we do to start building that self-awareness?
Yeah, such a great point. And they do. These moments happen at the worst time,
Oh
always.
yeah, yeah.
That's it. So, I would pick a good time. So when you're feeling good, when you're alone, when you're feeling calm, we can easily put ourselves into a state of, threat, right? Like we can, if we think of
True.
things that make us upset, we're all very good at knowing how to upset our own selves,
That is
right?
true. That's true.
So, to start learning how your body's communicating to you and to start learning to react in a different way, you can actually practice this, right? So when you're alone and everything is calm and comfortable, think about something that's very triggering, maybe something that happened in the past or, a particular memory of an event that was very upsetting. Allow your body to go through the emotions. And I tell people, emotions typically last about 90 seconds. We think they last a lot longer,
Yeah, it feels like 90 hours.
right? Because the sensations linger in our body. But if we learn how to breathe it in, feel it, and then release it, we're training our system to take in that sort of threat and to release it and go back to baseline a lot quicker.
Oh,
So we can practice this, but first is the self-awareness piece. So, you know what, Lisa, the next time you or anyone else listening finds themselves triggered, you can, if you're facing someone or you're in a group of people, just say, you know what, I'm going to go to the washroom. I need 5 minutes to myself. Okay? Go to the washroom and have a conversation with yourself. Become aware of what you're thinking. Bring your thoughts to conscious awareness. What am I thinking now? Is the threat real? Why am I perceiving a threat? Is this person really attacking me, or do I just feel like they are because I'm sensitive in this area? If you can, most of the time you can rationalize and talk yourself down.
right, right, right.
And and also, like I tell people, make little notes in your phone, right? You felt this weird pain in your shoulder. Next time you feel it again, make the connection.
Oh, how interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because so much of this work isn't necessarily done in the middle of the trigger, right? It's done when you're calm. It's when you're calm and you can rationally think it through. And again, going into it with curiosity rather than judgment. So we're not hard on ourselves because we can't help that we're in this position, but we can help ourselves to get out of it. But it's
Yeah.
really just practicing that when you're in your calm state, because when you're we were just talking about this on another podcast where when you're in that moment, the front of your brain shuts down, your so you can't think clearly, you just can't. And so it's when you're in your calm moments that you can kind of think this stuff through, practice it, understand it, and learn to feel those emotions. And then you're right, you start feeling those warning signs coming up, and before that trigger really hits. There are triggers that sometimes hit us, of course, that we don't see coming, but
Yeah.
there's sometimes situations where you can go into, you go, okay, this could trigger me, this could be a situation, and then the practice will help you work through it without having an explosive moment like I used to have.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we all did, right? You're not
Yeah,
alone, you're in good
yeah.
company, but you articulated that so beautifully.
Thank
And
you.
I want to end the question by saying that just like we can identify triggers, there's a new word that's floating around the internet called glimmers, which is like the opposite of triggers. So glimmers are like not things that set you off, but things that make you feel good.
Ooh, I like that. Something positive.
It's so positive. And so I use this technique all the time, not just identifying when I don't feel at my best, but making a conscious effort to actually identify when I do feel good. So if you and I are having a conversation and we're sort of laughing and it's enjoyable, I'll say in my mind, I feel really good in this moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's a practice of gratitude, but also reinforcing, right? Like the focus on the
Yes.
positive, because that's what we want to get to that point where we have more moments where we feel good than moments where we don't feel so good.
I love that you shared that because you're right, we don't want to get so focused on just the negative part that's going on because then that's all we're going to see. Because I bet when we start looking at our glimmer moments, we're going to find that there's more glimmer moments as time goes on than there are the trigger moments or the challenging moments.
We have so
Thank
much
you.
control over our minds. Like, even if you were to just close your eyes now and go, I feel really good in this moment, you'll probably feel this nice calm come over you, like
Right.
this warmth. We control all of that.
Yes. You know, a real good example of that, and then we'll end this question, but the real good example for me is when someone would hurt me, right? Someone would do something to hurt me, and then I would go tell two or three or four friends. And every time I would retell that story, I would relive it and all those emotions and feelings would come up, and by the time I got done telling the story, I felt like it just happened all over again. And
Yeah.
I learned not to focus on that because of what it did with me. But instead, really what I would do is sit back and start looking at it and go, okay, what really happened here instead of focusing just on the negative. But my point here is paying attention to what you're saying and what you're thinking about will definitely affect how you feel. So I love that. Look for the glimmers too.
Yeah, I love that.
It's
Well said.
perfect balance. Beautiful, beautiful. If this question resonates with you or you have a question for our experts, let us know in the comments and make sure to follow so you can get more insights on trauma healing.